Am I the asshole for not accepting my brother and sister's relationship? My mom and dad had me very young. Their relationship ended when I was 2 and it did not end well. There were a lot of accusations, no one ever admitted to anything, and so they just sort of contentiously co-parented me. About 5 years after the relationship ended, my mom and dad both met their future spouses. Stepmom, SM, and stepdad, SD, were great for the co-parent relationship, and my parents weren't so concerned with what the other parent was doing. My parents would still fight, but it wasn't nearly as bad, more passive-aggressive instead of outright yelling. Eventually, my mom had a daughter with SD and my dad had a son with SM. I watched my siblings grow up since I was a decade older, spending more time with my sister because she lived with my mom. As a result, my brother and sister, not related, but shared me as a brother, spent time together as kids. Not every weekend, but playing during my sports game or when they were invited to each other's birthday parties. When I was 15–16, my parents had a big fight that basically destroyed their relationship. I am still not sure what it was about because neither the parents, SM plus SD, will not talk about it, but they stopped talking to one another completely. I was gifted a car and started driving myself to and from. My brother and sister basically stopped seeing each other and my family shifted into 2 factions, and I have kept my lives separate from one another to keep the peace. There have been a few unavoidable events like graduations, but those have been few and cordial. Last week, my sister, Grace, now 19 female, dropped the bombshell that she met up with my brother, Anthony, 20 male, through mutual friends. They remembered each other and exchanged numbers. They had been communicating and even started dating. She was telling me because they were interested in continuing the relationship and wanted my blessing. I didn't lie, I was pissed. I said that this was the worst idea ever. Not only do they share a sibling, they are not blood related, but their parents hate each other, used to be in a sexual relationship, and have gone to great lengths to have no contact for the last 10+ years. She thinks that they are over it, but I was the one that lived through it. They are my parents, after all. I straight up told her the truth. This relationship was doomed and it needed to end before they got serious feelings. I know some will say that I am a butt, but I am not thinking of me. My parents will already be tied together forever because of me, which they have accepted. That was their decision. But will they be able to accept their other child choosing the child of their hated ex-spouse? I don't think so. Grace pretty much told me not to project my parents' relationship onto her, which honestly, I agree. But these are her and Anthony's parents, too. Shouldn't they be thinking of them? By the way, Anthony has not responded to my texts or calls since I found out. AITA for not accepting my brother and sister's relationship? Update. Just got off the phone with Anthony and he knows how the relationship will be perceived, especially by our dad. That is why he and Grace have been dating quietly to test the waters before agreeing to come out. Now that time has come and they are telling me first, then the parents next. Anthony was using me as a gauge for how our dad and Grace's mom will react, and obviously, he wasn't pleased with the result. I pretty much told him what I told Grace, that you have an uphill battle before anything has really happened. But, I did tell him something that I didn't tell Grace. I told him that I would stand behind them because, yes, it is weird as hell, but at the end of the day no laws were being broken, so I was cool. I will let you know how my mom and dad take it. Now that things are decided, there is no way Grace won't tell my mom. Anthony will be slower to tell our dad. We will see how it plays out. Not the asshole she asked for your blessing, which implies your opinion. You gave it, she really shouldn't have expected a better reaction. It is weird, you could have taken it even worse. You're also really entitled to not want to deal with your parents being together more often. This will affect you. Your opinions and feelings are valid. The siblings are way out of line. Your brother is probably dodging your calls because he knows how weird it is and how badly you will take it. He obviously didn't care enough to prioritize your feelings, so still shitting, but at least understands you're a person with feelings. Nah. She asked for your blessing. You were honest. She wasn't the asshole for asking or having the relationship in the first place, but you also aren't the asshole for being honest. You could maybe have said, I don't think it's a good idea for XYZ, but I'll support you. But if she genuinely wanted your blessing and not a placatory statement, she'd understand your feelings. Your parents' opinions also don't come into it. They should be able to put their opinions aside for their children. I don't know if you are or not. One thing for sure is that if the relationship continues to grow, the shitstorm from the parents might be epic and fun to watch. Not the asshole. It's weird as shit. I grew up spending time with my half-sisters, half-brothers and sister when we were kids. That would be so weird. And while there's no blood connection, there is a term for this. It's called quarter siblings. You're not the asshole because they asked for your blessing and you have no obligation to give it. They invited your feedback on the situation. There are literally billions of other people in the world they can date who they don't share a sibling with. Get on with your own life. Lots of things are happening all the time that we may not like or agree with, but a habit of acceptance will help you live your life. AITA for telling my wife she is my type after she bashed my taste in women? I adore my wife. She is the best thing to ever happen to me and I can't wait to start a family together. She is also an absolute knockout in the looks department, and knows she is. Whenever the subject of exes or crushes or just talking about someone I had previously said I thought was pretty, she starts unloading on them about their looks. How she can't figure out why I'd ever think they were attractive or that she doesn't understand my taste in women. This went on for a while and I never said anything because I truly don't give a fuck about any of those people, only her. So what's the point of sticking up for someone not relevant to my life? But eventually, it started to bother me. I started to feel like I was being insulted because I was ever interested in these girls. I eventually spoke up and explained that when she's relentlessly bashing these women, it actually makes me feel bad about myself. Like I've never been with a beautiful woman and my entire dating history is disgusting. Sure, not every girl I've dated is a smoke show, but that wasn't really relevant to our relationships or why they didn't work out. She is objectively correct about some of the exes being average or below average, but several of them are objectively gorgeous. It always puts me in a rock and a hard place because ultimately it doesn't matter because they aren't in my life and all I want is a happy life with her. But there is part of me, my ego, that wants to resist because it feels so disparaging and belittling towards me. We talked it out and she said she would stop. It never really stopped, but I just avoided the subject or agreed with whatever she said when the subject came up. Until today, when the subject came up again. We were reminiscing about the first night we met. She had come to a bar with another guy who I thought she was dating. One of our first conversations was about mutual friends and I asked if she knew a brown-haired girl that worked at her company that was cute. Fast forward to years of dating and marriage and we can't remember the girl's name while reminiscing. We gave the old Facebook a snoop and found her. She goes right back into the bashing routine. How she can't believe I thought she was cute and she will never understand my taste in women or my type. I finally had enough and casually dropped, "Well, you're my type so you're grouped in with the rest of them." She flipped out, left me at the cafe we were at and has basically given me the silent treatment for the last 24 hours. AITA? Too long did not read. My wife bashes any woman's looks that I've dated or been interested in and constantly insults my taste in woman. I pointed out that my wife is my type so she is really just insulting herself. Edit. Thank you all for the replies and advice. Both of us need to work on our insecurities. I purposely mentioned my ego. Wanting to resist because I know I'm not completely secure with myself either and I'm aware of it. We've talked about how to work on her insecurities and how I can be supportive while not being a doormat. If you boil a person down to a single flaw they have, then of course they will be the most vile person in the world. This one, albeit large, character flaw of my wife does not define her. She is incredibly kind, funny, thoughtful, and supportive. I do truly adore her and can't imagine being with anyone else. Her actions are from deep-rooted insecurities and really aren't about the other person she is insulting at all. Also, the amount of you that want to just throw the baby out with the bathwater was shocking, haha, but I get Reddit can be over the top with reactions. I posted this because I wanted advice, strategies, and to make sure I wasn't totally missing something so that we can make our relationship better for both of us. We are very happily married and will continue to grow together. Not the asshole. She's insecure. Tearing down other women is such gross behavior and she needs to get over herself. Being beautiful doesn't give you the right to trash on other people. Not the asshole. I've actually dealt with this issue a few times. I tend to just pretend like they didn't say anything or be really vague. There's no reason to bring up past relationships, especially when you two are married, lol. It's really uncool of your wife be dragging other women. No matter how they look, which they can't really help, it doesn't mean she gets to rip on them. Not the asshole. Not the asshole. This is toxic insecurity. This is jealousy. This is possessive. She is competing with ghosts and trying to put them and you down to make her feel better. You both need to grow up. Regularly ranking people on a scale with above average and below average is objectifying, lame, and a sign of insecurity. With that being said, not the asshole. Am I the asshole for not adopting my daughter? I, 46M, am married to my amazing wife, 44F. My wife had a twin sister who had unfortunately passed from childbirth. However, Mike, 47M, who was 30 at the time, really stepped up for the first 3 years of Sarah's, 17F, life. Sarah's paternal and maternal grandparents and my wife also were stepping up to help out Mike. I helped out occasionally but not as much as my wife because I didn't want to overstep. When Sarah was 1, my wife got pregnant and we started focusing on our baby. Everything went smoothly for Mike, until Tracy, 42F, 25 at the time, came into the picture. Tracy was an okay stepmother but really didn't care. But I guess one day Tracy gave Mike an ultimatum between her and Sarah. Mike immediately drove Sarah to her maternal grandparents' house, told her to sit and wait for Grandma and Grandpa, and then left. After a week it was decided that me and my wife would take care of her and my son got an older sister. Sarah was like a daughter to me and my wife, and called us Mom and Dad. We did not need to legally adopt her because Mike didn't want her and still to this day could not give a crap about Sarah. Her bio-paternal grandparents reached out to us asking to be in Sarah's life, which we agreed. Sarah has always known of Mike but never reached out. A week ago Sarah sat us down and asked us to legally adopt her. That was a no. We can't afford the adoption process or let alone lawyers. Yesterday during dinner she left the house to go spend the night at her grandmother's. We had explained to her that she doesn't need any fancy papers to be our daughter and we love her as one. She may not be our blood daughter but she's just as important to us as our son. If that wasn't the case, I wouldn't have taught her Italian and my family wouldn't have taught her their traditions. Ever since she stormed off, my in-laws and Sarah's paternal aunt and grandparents agree with me but don't want to start drama with Sarah. My mother is willing to pay for the adoption but I know they're saving money so my terminally ill dad can pass in Italy and me, my wife, kids, and mom can go to the funeral there. AITA. Edit. The legal fees of adoption where me and my wife are is generally around $15,000 $25,000 We had gotten her last name legally changed. Her last name is, my last name, Sill's last name. Mike and my Sill were engaged at the time of the birth. My Sill did not want to share a last name with her husband because of her independence, and they agreed to have it her Sill's last name since she bore the child. We had gotten it changed to that when she was 13 because we couldn't afford adoption and she agreed to have it changed. My wife wanted to hyphenate it because my wife didn't want to erase her sister from her daughter, and Sarah agreed to have it changed that way because although she has never met her mom, my wife makes sure Sarah knows what a wonderful woman she was. Also, Mike does pay child support. He only pays $250 a month. He is not legally inclined to, but Mike's parents told him if he doesn't pay he will not get their will. He sends the money to them, and they send it to us. Edit number 2. I didn't clarify in the post because it was more of a summary than a detail of events. We were not hard with Sarah about her wanting us to adopt her. We softly told her that love her so much and to us she is our child and we love her just as much as we do our son. This is a delicate situation and anyone with a brain cell would know to handle it softly. I put it in the post softly because I'm direct most of the time, but with my daughter, my wife and I handled it pretty gently. Info. Do you have legal guardianship? Is she legally in your home with legal protections? For a 17-year-old those are not just papers for her, that's a way to fully become family in a legal way. Now for her it just seems like in the end you don't want her as your child fully. Of course she had hurt. I don't want to call you an a-hole but I still think you're in the wrong even if money is the problem. What country do you live in? I call bullshit on those adoption fees. What you have is a private adoption. We paid $1,200 $2,000 each for our kids' adoptions. U.S. varies state to state, but not that much. No assholes here. I am not sure where you live, but adult adoption is generally a lot cheaper and easier. You may even be able to handle it pro se. You could do it when she turns 18. Not the asshole but in her mind, you have rejected her and taken away her sense of security. Am I the asshole for running over the kids' plant garden several times? I, 25F, live in a highly populated city. We have a backyard parking lot in the small building I live in and the ground is covered with concrete grid pavement, has holes with grass in between. I was away from home for a few weeks and also purchased a new car. This car is significantly bigger than my last and extremely hard to park, especially with the small and awkwardly spaced parking lot. It's not straight lines like at a grocery store. The builder worked around the weirdly shaped building and the gazebo, so the parking spots are all over the place so every apartment can have one. Well, the morning I came back I received a text that I had run over the kids' project garden for the summer. I was confused because I was sure I hadn't gone near any of the small patches of dirt we have for planting. I went on the balcony and did see that there were crumpled plants on the left of my parking spot. The plants, however, were planted in between the grid pavement. I texted back that their makeshift garden was quite literally on the pavement meant for cars to go over. They told me that I can avoid running it over. I tried for a few days, but ultimately one night in the dark I ran some of them over again. They painted white lines, but again one night in the dark I ran it over. Next step my neighbors took was to put potted plants to surround it, and guess what, I ran over the pots late at night. At this point one guy called me downstairs and gave me a 10-minute lecture how to park without doing it. I told him to respectfully F off and move the plants next to his parking spot. My spot is so awkward, and there is a huge car on the right, so in the dark, when in doubt I am driving over the plants as opposed to damaging the car next to me. He got really livid and we got into a huge argument. Some people suggested they install lights so I can see better at night and avoid the plants, but honestly even in the daylight I have to spend 10 minutes maneuvering and getting out the car to make sure the garden is okay. I don't want to do that. I said no and told them I would run over the plants again and they should move. A lot of the people called me in a hole. Am I? Edit. An attempt to show you the parking spaces. Building, me, garden. Neighbor. Building 2. Edit. English is not my first language. To clarify, the garden is in a driveway, in a space meant for cars to drive on. Last edit. I think some of you don't understand that there is a learning curve. It doesn't mean I am an irresponsible driver. I signed up for a few lessons with a driving instructor for this, but I still need time to get used to driving a bigger car. I don't get the hate that I upgraded to a bigger car. I've been driving for 7 years and I don't have a single parking ticket or road scuffle. Why? Because I take my time learning to use my cars. It's not a crime. Edit. My new car is a BMW GT, not one of the massive trucks you have across the pond. Those are not even available over here. Not the asshole. I'll give the benefit of the doubt that it shouldn't be this difficult to park into a normal bay, and placing unnecessary obstacles around that just makes it even worse. It shouldn't be difficult to park up at home. Not the asshole. Why on earth would they put a garden so close to where people park? That's just dumb. What if the kids are out there tending to the garden and get hit? Not the asshole. No matter what, they should not be leaving anything that is not a car in the parking lot. I rent in a condo building with a shared parking lot, and there's a rule that only automobiles are allowed to stay for long periods of time in that area. Trying to phrase that as odd, I just mean like obviously a person can stand in the parking lot, but you cannot sit in a chair for hours. So for my place, even if the plant pots were in their parking spot, they'd be against the rule and removed. Because it's a driving hazard, I had looked into it because I don't have a car and had a neighbor parking in my spot. Not the asshole that is wildly irresponsible of those parents to allow the children to put a garden in the parking lot. The least that will happen is that the plants get destroyed by being driven over. The worst is a small intending a garden who is not visible to someone driving in. Do you own your apt or rent? Is there a building manager? I'd speak with them, because this neighbor is being unreasonable, and if I owned the building I'd be worried about liability. Not the asshole. If the neighbor is so confident in their driving abilities they can have the garden next to their spot. It's not on you to take on the burden of the driveway garden.